In this video, we're going to discuss what a sales budget is and how you would put together a sales budget for a firm. So if you remember from our video about the master budget, a sales budget is actually the foundational budget when we talk about making other budgets for the firm. So this is the foundation because we use it to make other budgets, for example, the production budget and ultimately the budgeted income statement. So we really want to get our sales budget right, and we don't want to have any issues putting it together. And what we're going to need to start our sales budget is we're going to need some information from the marketing department. So namely, what we're going to need to know at a minimum is a couple things. We're going to need to know the quantity of units, which I'll just call Q, and then we're going to need to know the selling price for those units, right? So we say, okay, are we going to sell 500 units, and at what price? And we'll do this on a quarterly basis, but you could do it on a month-to-month basis too. So let's just go right through an example, so this is a little less abstract for you. So let's say that you own a bicycle shop, and to make things easy to understand, let's just say you just sell one type of bicycle, you're just going to have one price, and we're going to look at it on a quarterly basis. So we'll say I've got Q1 is quarter one, Q2 is the second quarter, and so forth, and then we're going to have the annual total for the year. So when we think about this sales budget, we're going to need to know, okay, so we got our Q, this is right here, the units to be sold. What I mean by that is we're saying, okay, in quarter one, what number of bicycles does our marketing department estimate we're going to sell? And we're going to say that's 50. Right now, how they come up with that 50, that's beyond the scope of what we're doing with this budget, right? We're doing this from an accounting perspective. That would be a marketing forecast issue. All right, so they've done their forecast and they say Q is 50 for quarter one. We're going to sell 50 bicycles. And then in quarter two, they say 300 we think we'll sell. Quarter three is 200, and quarter four is 100. Now, I've changed up the numbers for each quarter just to kind of reflect that there's a little bit of seasonality for certain types of businesses. Now, I don't know a lot about the bicycle industry, but I would assume that more people buy bicycles in the warmer months of the year. So let's say that this bicycle shop is in North Dakota or something. People are going to run out in the second quarter when it's starting to get warm and say, let's buy bicycles so we can ride them this summer. Whereas in January, when it's really cold, they don't buy as many bicycles. So in any event, we've got different totals for each quarter. Right, and in terms of number of units that we expect to sell, the number of bicycles, units are just one unit is one bicycle. But then we need to know the selling price per unit, right? And that's our P. Right? Remember we said Q and P. We need to know from the marketing department. We need to know what is the selling price for each bicycle. So let's say $300. This bicycle that we sell is $300, and it's that same price in every quarter. So then when we get to the annual, we don't just sum up these prices. We just take and just say it's $300 because throughout the year it was $300. So, but when we actually look at this annual or year total for the number of units to be sold, we actually do sum up those units. Okay, so this is basically this 650 is throughout the year we're going to sell 650 bicycles, and then our price in each quarter and for the year happens to be $300 a bicycle. It never changes. So now we can go and say, okay, what is our forecast for sales in terms of sales dollars, right? When we think about it in terms of units, this is our sales forecast. But now in terms of sales dollars, we multiply Q times P, and that's going to give us these numbers right here. So just walk you through briefly one, and you can figure out the rest. Quarter one, we're going to sell 50 bicycles. That's what we budgeted, and we're going to sell them at $300 a piece. So then we take 50 times 300, and that's going to give us $15,000. And then so on for each quarter. Quarter two, we just take the 300 times 300. We're selling 300 bicycles at $300 a pop, and that gives us $90,000.